Hello, everybody. How's it going? Hey, I'm out here doing some photography today, and it's fantastic. It's lightly snowing. It's beautiful, bright, overcast light. The snow has completely covered all the sagebrush. So it's a perfect day to do some minimalist photography. If I can find some nice trees or wildlife to isolate against just all this vast winterness. And I did that earlier, and I didn't bring this video camera with me while I was doing that, but I made some photos, and I think there's a potential for an interesting kind of story that I'm going to talk to you about when I get back home and get in the studio to show you the images that I've made and the progression of the scene. So I found 3 coyotes that were out amongst all this whiteness out there. And it was pretty, and I made some nice images. But I kind of want to show you the development of how kind of the scene developed and how my vision for what photograph I wanted to make out of that scene, how that developed, and then show you kind of the sketch images of me trying things and, hoping that the coyote would be in the right place at the right time, and then finally getting to the point where I made a shot that I'm very happy with. So I think it's going to be a reasonably interesting little session back in the studio to show you all the sketch images, and then finally the image that I think is the one from that session out there, from an hour of taking pictures of these coyotes. So it's kind of just an interesting look into the process of when I find something that is interesting to me photographically, and how I approach kind of narrowing down how I want that to look, and trying to adjust to the scene and the situation and fine-tuning what I want out of that scene and that photograph. And then often that doesn't happen, but today it did happen. So I do get to show you the final image that I feel like captured that scene today. So let's get back into the studio, and then I'll talk you through those sketch images and the final image that I really like. I hope you enjoy this one. It's different than normal, but different isn't always a bad thing. So enjoy it. See ya. All right, so here I am back in the office with my computer to talk you through what happened out there. So this was kind of a situation where I wasn't out there vlogging. And in hindsight, I'm glad I wasn't vlogging. At the time, I was kind of disappointed that I wasn't, because it was kind of a cool situation to watch this whole scene progress and spend some time out there with these coyotes and kind of thinking about the different photographic opportunities that were out there and that were going to happen, and anticipating those and looking for what I wanted out of these photographs and that kind of thing. So it was an interesting day. The more I think about it, I think if I had been vlogging and brought the video gear and been thinking about making a video and making photos and managing my still camera and the video camera, all that can get really overwhelming, and I think I would have screwed this up on some level. I think it would have turned out okay, but I think it worked out great that I was able to just focus on the photos and the situation, and then I can come back and talk about it later. And so hopefully you'll find this interesting too, to see kind of how that progressed, the scene progressed, and how I was thinking about making the photos, and what I finally came out with at the end of the day. So it's a little different scene than a normal vlog, but it just wasn't in the cards that day. So I'll try this, and hopefully this is a nice little substitute for a really cool day where I made some nice images. So it started out with this coyote was up on this ridge, beautiful white day, everything's covered in snow. This was back in late February. And we had a ton of snow in February. So all the sagebrush is covered. It really simplifies the scene. It was snowing, but nice bright light. And there was this coyote up on this ridge out here. And then we've got these nice trees kind of behind, a little mountain behind them. So it's a very simple scene with just the coyote and these light faded trees showing through the snowstorm. and otherwise it's just all white, which was awesome. So this was kind of the first couple of photos that I took, and I like these. This is taken with a 600 millimeter lens, so this coyote was a long ways away. So I felt like this is the best I could do with that, is make this little coyote in this big white world of winter wonderland and snow. And I think that was kind of what was in my head of this photo. So the coyote was wandering around out there. The next photo in the series was the coyote wandered over and sat down. So a little different look, a little less dynamic than the other one, because the coyote's just hanging out here. But similar situation with just very simple. And I've got the trees in the background being mostly obscured by the blowing snow. Another cool photo there. Just winter wonderland, right? So then the coyote got on the move, and there turned out there were 3 coyotes, and they all kind of came together and were kind of wandering around out there. And so I was looking for situations where I could get all 3 of them in the frame, and that wasn't really happening yet. They were spaced too far apart, but I could see them all out there, and then they started wandering around. And this one kind of wandered over towards this tree, and then this tree was a lot closer to me, obviously, than those conifers that were in the background in the last one. So this tree becomes a very important element in the photo. And this was kind of, I would call this a sketch image of kind of trying to refine what I want out there. And like this coyote wandering up to this tree, is there an interesting photo with, just having the coyote alone out in the vastness is really cool. Does it work to have a coyote and a tree out there in the vastness? And it certainly was on my mind, and this kind of was a sketch photo where I don't think it works. The tree is just kind of ugly and blah. The coyote down there in the corner, he's just kind of in the like half blocked by the snowbank, so you can't even see the whole coyote. And there's some other bush down there and stuff. So I was trying this, and I've liked the thought of, a coyote and just a lone tree out there amongst the vastness has a really good potential. But this wasn't it. And then they kept walking, and then the whole kind of group started headed to the west. And so I saw another tree out there to the west that was a little cooler than this tree, and they were heading for it. So I went out in front of them and got set up there and waited. As this coyote approached the tree, it was behind that snowbank again, so you could barely just see the top of it. And then when it got past the tree, it kind of climbed out of that tree well of the snow. And I made this image as it was kind of climbing out of that tree well into the blowing snow. You can see it kind of, the snow blowing its hair back. And a nice interesting pose right there. And so I like this image, and this was kind of like, yeah, okay, now we're getting somewhere. It's pretty good image, but then looking even further, there's more trees that way. So then it was like, okay, I'm going to go to the next one and see if there's something that could happen there. And so this was kind of the next little clump of trees. And this group of trees, I had to use a wider lens. So the previous images and all the other ones, I think, were all shot with the 600 f4. This one was shot at about 100 millimeters. So you see down in this lower right corner, there's one of the coyotes as it's approaching this cluster of trees. And so in my head, I liked the towering trees amongst all this vastness of the snow, and this, it's scale, right? So it's showing the scale of this tiny little coyote out amongst this gigantic winter world. And so this was the first coyote of the 3 to approach this cluster of trees. And the other 2 were behind him out here to the right, out of frame. But as I saw this one wander into the frame, and then I saw it, it got into this gap, and I made a photo. And then you could see that the other coyotes were coming too. And so I just waited and hoped that they would all kind of be in the frame at the same time with the trees. And then bang, here is the image that I ended up with, where one frame, there was just a very brief moment where they were all 3 separated from the trees, and the other ones, one of the coyotes would be like a little bit behind that tree, or 2 of them were good and the other one was still out of the frame, or whatever. So I did get one frame where all 3 of the coyotes were separate out in the snow and not like intersecting with any of the trees. So turned out cool. This again, as I mentioned, this one's about scale and showing the coyote in this big world, and the three of them together out there, moving across the landscape together as a group. So that one turned out really cool. But then as I'm looking here, it's like, what's next? That was a great photo, but what's next? And then looking further to the west, there's a really cool tree out there. So I went out there, and as these coyotes are wandering across, I'm still making images of them and trying to find something good. Like, this one has a kind of potential. If I could have got all three of them like in a row out here, I think it would have had a lot more effect. But I'm shooting as I'm going out here, and I'm looking for the different opportunities. But then I see that one of the coyotes breaks off, and he walks further away, but up on this ridge. And so it gives me an interesting little shot at just the coyote and the vastness, right? So he was up on this ridge. It was beautiful. And then looking further to the west, I saw that there's a cool, interesting tree further that way. So I went down to that tree further down and waited for the coyote to walk along that ridge. And so here's what came up as that coyote approached on this ridge line up here. This tree looked awesome. So this tree has way more character than the other trees that I'd photographed that day with these coyotes. So I really wanted to make sure that I could get something out of this. So I waited here. I kind of wanted this tree to point at the coyote. So ideally I wanted the coyote right about here in a nice, dynamic stance with the right leg position as it's walking across there. And bang. So there's the image that I got, where I really like that coyote's pose. The tree is in the right spot pointing up towards the coyote, and it really works great. Again, it's a scale thing with that tiny little coyote out in the vastness. The final processed image there, I converted to black and white. I added some clarity into the snow here, so we get a little more texture in all this snow to show the kind of the wind blownness of it a little bit. And I removed a distraction down here. If you see these three little bushes, I just used the Photoshop there, content aware, took those out of there in about 2 seconds. So this was the final image, a black and white conversion, and I think it works really well. I dig it. And then the coyote came down to that tree. I willed him down there. I was thinking, oh man, I wish that coyote was right next to that tree. And then after about 10 minutes, look what happened. There's the coyote right next to that tree. Sometimes it works out that way. Most of the time it doesn't. But anyway, so that coyote wandered right down to that tree, and that was pretty cool. But there's like a little dip in the snow there, and so the coyote was mostly hidden. But I definitely hung out there and waited. And eventually the coyote wandered off, and he started wandering around. And so while he was wandering around there, I wanted to make sure, like right now, he has come closer to me than the tree. So my depth of field is going to not allow me to have both the coyote and the tree in focus. So I'm taking pictures of the coyote, and the tree's blurry. But this is just kind of an image to show you of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking ahead to processing this later, where I know I might want a sharp image of that tree to focus stack in here. Because like in this one, if I'm focused on the coyote, this tree's a little bit blurry, and that might work, but it might not. So in my head, I'm making this image in case I need it later. So it takes a second to just shift the focus, make an image, and then I can get back to working on the coyote. And then eventually the coyote walks right in front of the tree, which was killer. And then now I've got that blurry tree behind him, which actually works great. It works better than if I was to focus stack that and have both of them sharp. That separation looks really good. So I just had to move just a tiny bit, and then I got that coyote right in between those two tree trunks, and it's looking around, and I really love this image. This is one of my top 2 favorite images of that day. Similar image, just given a little different look, glance around, but a really excellent set of images there. Next, the coyote wandered off again. It just started kind of wandering off to the left, and then as it was kind of departing the scene, definitely made me very happy to see him stop and turn and kind of glance at, like, one last look at its surroundings as it's departing the scene. And so it's looking kind of back, not at the tree, but into that part of the frame. And if it was looking at, the other direction out of the frame, it doesn't work as well. So it's looking back into the frame, and just kind of gives me the sense of them surveying this vastness out here with just me and this one tree all alone out here. I'm looking around. What am I looking for? And that's kind of the story in your head. What's he looking for out there? And in this case, he was probably looking for those other couple of coyotes, one of which was probably flirting with. This was kind of coyote mating season. So could have been looking for predators. Who knows? But that's kind of the process there. What's he looking at out there? I think this is more effective photograph than if it had been looking straight into the camera. I like that with this scene, the big openness, this seems to work a lot better than if it had just been looking straight into the camera. So again, this is a wonderful photo, and I love it just the way it is. But as I mentioned over here, that photo, where I've got a nice sharp photo of the tree here with the blurry coyote, I can now focus stack. I can use this sharp tree and drop it in and focus stack it with this sharp coyote. And so I think this is the final image. I like this better with the tree being in focus. And so this was my favorite image of the day, and the last image of the day as well. After this, they all moved off to the west, just into the emptiness, and that was it. It was a fantastic day. So there it is, the coyote in the great wonderland out there. And I hope this video, being a little out of the ordinary for me, I hope it works. I hope you guys get something out of this. And because I don't think I would have been able to talk you through that at all while I was out there in the field. It would have been really difficult trying to manage all that. So this just gives you a little insight. Your process is, I'm sure, 100% different. And if you were there, you would have 100% gotten different images than me. There were so many different photo opportunities out there with 3 coyotes in the snow, these separate different tree situations out there. The coyotes were interacting from time to time, but I was mostly set up in different spots waiting for the opportunities that I had in my head. And you might have had completely different ideas for what photographs to make out there. And that's one of the beauties of photography is everybody, like you put 2 photographers in the same place and they're going to come up with, a lot of the times, totally different images. Certainly in a situation like this where it's very dynamic and there's a lot of options and a lot of opportunities, you could come up with something completely different than what I did. But I also think it helps to kind of see the way other photographers are thinking and see how they work, and try and incorporate some of that in your own photography and learn something new, try some new kind of thought processes and tactics out there. So give it a thumbs up if you liked it. If you didn't on this one, give it a thumbs down, or just leave me a comment and say, I'd rather if you have vlogged that. It would have been better. Because I don't know. It's hard to tell. I still think vlogging this, I would have not done as good a job making the photos. It's just a lot to manage out there. So this was it. I hope this is a good substitute for a vlog today, and I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.